Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. We have slowly been digesting this idea of Tawheed, of encompassment, an encompassing notion of Tawheed, the relationship between Allah and creation. And we've touched upon certain verses of the Holy Quran, and in this session now I want to go through a very important verse of the Holy Quran where this encompassing Tawheed reaches its maximum. In the Quran, and we'll come to the verses soon, Allah is mentioned as the fourth of three, or is mentioned as the sixth of five. He is not mentioned as one of three. He is mentioned as the fourth of three. This has to be opened up, inshallah. Now, let's go back to me, or my mind. The reason I'm using the term mind, because it's non-Muslim friendly too. One has to give these discussions in a manner when you want to introduce the Quran and verses of Tawheed to non-Muslims. You have to explain it in a manner where they can understand. But if you keep on using certain jargon which is specific to one's religion, it's going to be difficult. And we don't want to give a definition of what the I, the soul is, but the mind will suffice for now. Remember the example of the mind and the mental picture of the apple, for example. Listen very carefully here, so we have me on one side, and then you have the mental picture of the apple on the other side. There are two things here, X and Y. It's correct to say I am the apple, the mental picture of the apple. I am the apple's second, i.e. the second of one. That is a correct statement. I'll explain it in a minute. It's also correct to say the apple is not my second. I am the apple's second. The apple is not my second. Now, apple is one thing, that's why I'm saying second. But if there were two things, it's okay to say that I am those two apples' third. But those two apples, okay, are not my second or third. But I am those two apples' third. These two statements are referring to the same reality but with different angles, are correct to say. Now, in the first statement, which I said, I am the apple's second. Okay? Here, if with my mind, all the manifestations in my mind, let's say there was 1, or 2, or 3, or 100. When I go through them and count them, I still end with something, which I say, me. When I count those different manifestations, the mental pictures of the apple, the tree, table, at the end of it, I still end with an entity, which is me. Now what that me is, doesn't matter. But the me is still there. It's still present. I finish counting, but the me is still there. Okay? Hence, if there were two manifestations, two mental pictures, that which is left, which is me, I would be the third. Because the I still subsists. I've done the counting, but I'm still left with me. So I become the third of those two, assuming there were two manifestations. If there were three manifestations, when I've counted them, and there were only three manifestations, I've counted them, the I is still present. Where I'm still left with an I. The I is the fourth of these three. If there were 1,000 manifestations, I is still left at the end. I count it. It's still there. I am the 1,001st of those 1,000. And the same applies with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and creation. If you count all the manifestations, whenever you stop counting n manifestations, Allah is the n plus first. The third of two. The fourth, Allah is the fourth of three. The sixth of five. Now, so here Allah is one. Me, that was one too. But there were four manifestations that I counted. I was left. I said I'm the fifth of four. There were 1,000. I'm the 1,001st of 1,000. And that's because when you count all the manifestations, and this is the angle we're entering this part of the discussion, we want to start with counting the manifestations of Allah or the manifestations of my mind. When you count the manifestations, you say 1, 2, 3, 4, but you're still left with me, or you're left with Allah. And you say therefore me or Allah is the fifth of 4, is the sixth of 5. Now Allah is one. One in Arabic from this angle is Al-Wahid. Not Ahad. Al-Wahid. When you say Allah is Wahid, you say it because the Allah who is one is after you've counted all the manifestations and you're left with him. So he is the, let's say, sixth of 5, the fifth of 4, the n plus 1, n plus first of n manifestations. And this Wahid, that is Allah, yes, there is a second, third and fourth existing thing. Because you counted them to start off with. You said 1, 2, 3, the sun, the moon, the animal. Then you finished. You're left with Allah. He is the n plus first of n manifestations. But the point is, when you say Allah is Wahid, you appreciate the multiplicity of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's just that Allah is the 7th of 6. But the multiplicity you do appreciate. But since that Allah is always there, the me is left after all the manifestations, they are the 7th of 6. They are the 8th of 7, and so on and so forth. Okay, now, but in the Quran, when Al-Wahid is used, it says this Wahid, Allah is Al-Wahidul Qahhar. It's a conquering one, Allah. An encompassing one. All the second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, all these were encompassed by the encompasser. Okay? He encompasses it all. Now, in the second statement where we said the apple is not our second, I am the apple second, but the apple isn't my second. Or if there were, instead of, let's say, use the example of Allah and creation, you can't say this creation is Allah's second. You can't say Allah is the creation's second, that creature's second. Allah is the second. But you can't say that the other way around. But what is correct to say is the creature is not Allah's second. Why? Now what's the angle here? That you say that mental apple is not my second, or that creature is not Allah's second. Why can't you say second there? You can say Allah is the second of that creature, but you can't say the creature is Allah's second. That the creature isn't Allah's second. Why? Because here now we start not by multiplicity, we start with Allah. Or let's go back first to the example of me and the apple. You start with me, my soul, my mind. You start with my mind, it's one. Then with the apple, when it is manifested in my mind, this apple is a manifestation of me, is a product of me. And the apple, it doesn't become mutually exclusive to me, never independently separates from me. So you started with me here. You didn't start in the realm of multiplicity. You started with me. When these manifestations are now counted, they are all me in dimension. So this, the same with Allah. When you start with Allah, then you approach His manifestations in creation. You started with Allah first. Then you look at the different creatures. They are never independent from Allah. They're never mutually exclusive to Allah. So with every creature you see, it's all Allah in dimension. So it's one, 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 one. The apple, it doesn't become my second. That creature doesn't become Allah's second. It's in unity with Allah. It's a manifestation of Allah. It never becomes independent from Allah. And you started with Allah, this oneness of Allah, which does not acknowledge now a two or a third or a fourth or a fifth. Here we came through another angle here. This oneness of Allah in the Quran is Ahad. The previous one, where you started with multiplicity, but you ended with one, you remained with Allah, which was encompassing all that. Here you started with Allah, the rest is never seen as a second, third or fourth. This oneness of Allah is called in the Quran Ahad. Qul huwa Allahu Ahad. Okay, so here, because whatever you manifest is Him, is Allah, but in dimension. So this is an important difference between, the translation wise you say one, but Wahid and Ahad, they are describing different realities of the same reality, different dimensions of the same reality. Now, let's go through the verses which I promised. In one verse it reads, لَقَدْ كَفَرَ الَّذِينَ قَالُوا إِنَّ اللَّهَ ثَالِثُ ثَلَاثَةٍ. Those who say that Allah is the third of three, they have disbelief. They're disbelievers. If you say that Allah is the third of three, so it's as if you count and there are three things, and one of those three is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as if they're horizontal to one another. That would be limiting Allah. We want to say something else. In chapter 58 verse 7, part of it reads, مَا يَكُونُ مِن نَجْوَى ثَلَاثَةٍ إِلَّا هُوَ رَابِئُهُمْ. That whenever there's three in a conversation, a private conversation, it never happens save that Allah is the fourth. وَلَا خَمْسَةٍ. And with five, إِلَّا هُوَ السَّادِسُهُمْ. Allah is the sixth. Look at the different understandings here. One, a group says that Allah gives birth, and therefore that which He gives birth to, it becomes independent from Allah. Islam says Lam Yalid. Another says Allah's hands are tied back. Islam says no, the very fabric of any given thing, it's all Him in dimension, moment to moment. And here a group says that Allah is one of three, the third of three. But Islam says no, Allah is the fourth of three, the sixth of five, and so on and so forth. So this is the encompassing Tawheed, which we have to master, acknowledge wholeheartedly, if we want to believe in the Mahdi properly. Mahdiism is based on this encompassing Tawheed. Without it, whatever you say of the Mahdi is of minimum benefit in real terms. In other verse of the Holy Quran, ذَلِكَ بِأَنَّ اللَّهَ هُوَ الْحَقِّ, Allah is the Haqq, وَأَنَّ مَا يَدْعُونَ مِن دُونِهِ, that which they call other than Allah or other than pure existence is nothing. What are you calling? It's all void. The verse says هُوَ الْبَاطِلِ, it's all void because it's nothing. So here, this is the Tawheed, the encompassing Tawheed, and I'll stop here. One can speak much more, and sometimes it may become uncomfortable for some, but this is how much we require for now. There are 2 or 3 other lectures which I may give, also just marginal issues on certain aspects of us wanting to see this reality, acknowledge it wholeheartedly, not only an academic thing. And then inshallah the link to Mahdiism inshallah will follow soon. وصلى الله على محمد وعلى آله